Part 22. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida De. Chapter 211. Where did these fleets come from? Henry stared at the situation on the sea level in the distance with wide eyes. A large fleet composed of dozens of ironclad ships was something even the company couldn't come up with. And judging from the round of shelling just now, the opponent's range is even beyond the meteor's farthest range. How dare you get distracted? At this time, a trident stabbed over, forcing Henry to raise his scimitar to resist. Damn fishman! Cursing angrily, Henry could only retract his gaze from the dreadnought in the distance and focus on the battle at hand. The meteor was now caught in a tug-of-war with the sea tribe inside and out. In terms of numbers, the number of sailors on a ship is definitely not as good as the sea tribesmen that are constantly gathering underwater. In order to ensure that the meteor will not escape the company's control. At this moment, most of the company's other warships are mainly supporting the meteor, and have temporarily given up their plans to engage in firefights with the Blood Tribe. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Cromwell waved his hand, trying to get some of the effective forces to leave first. The meteor doesn't think about it for the time being. As long as the Bloody Dawn and Stormbringer are preserved, this war can be declared a victory. However, at the moment Cromwell gave the order, he saw the fleet in the distance making new movements. On the Star of Tomorrow, Huon's hero noticed the scene where Cromwell was commanding. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Pointing at the Bloody Dawn, Huon's hero took a shooting stance. Bang! As the light envelops the Bloody Dawn, Cromwell immediately thought of the scene he had just seen. The several warships that were marked earlier have now turned into planks floating on the sea. Cover me, Cromwell ordered the people under his command without hesitation. Before the artillery fire comes. After receiving Cromwell's order, a series of vampire sailing ships tried to block the front of the Bloody Dawn ship. In the distance, the main and secondary guns of several giant ships roared simultaneously. Boom boom boom. The eternal shield spit out tongues of fire at an extremely fast speed, and a large number of shells were poured into the vampire fleet. Visible to the naked eye, water columns appear constantly on the surface of the water. There are also high-frequency solid-state incendiary bombs falling in the sky. Huge fire spread across the narrow waters of the Lifeng Islands, separating and blocking the vampire fleet. Lord Cromwell, the enemy's fire coverage is beyond our range. We can't fight back. Listening to the constant calls for help in his ears, Cromwell's face became gloomy and scary. The vampire warships around him were sinking into the deep sea one by one, while the enemy's firepower was endless. The location where countless artillery fires hit was beyond his range. Several more cannonballs with smoke of various colors flew over, making a harsh sound and hitting the sea near the vampire warship. Just like before. When a sea area is marked with colors, what follows is endless bombardment by battleship groups. Since the Star of Tomorrow is constantly firing flares and tracer bombs, the eternal night environment brought about by Bloody Dawn cannot function at this moment. On the other hand, Cromwell also saw in the war interface that the combat effectiveness of the vampire side was rapidly declining. From time to time, the names of vampire lords were crossed out in the war panel. Most of their lords did not participate in this battle. But the company patrols spread throughout the Fifth Channel are enough to make them overwhelmed. Lord Cromwell. Suddenly a vampire called Cromwell's name. What happened again? Cromwell frowned and looked at his men. At this glance, the elegance from the vampire clan was almost unsustainable. He saw two armored ships approaching from the side of Bloody Dawn that he had always ignored. Not only did they come over, the two armored ships directly blocked his route to avoid gunfire. The sailboats behind them were exploding one after another. Feeling the breath of death getting closer and closer, Cromwell could only grit his teeth and look at the ironclad ship blocking him in front of him. On the deck of one of the cruisers, Gao Qiang was lying comfortably on a deck chair. While enjoying the fruits fed by Julio, he stared at his miracle ship Bloody Dawn with strange eyes. It's like trying to get a front row seat in a movie theater. Seeing that Cromwell finally found him, Gao Qiang waved his hand. It's okay. If you hit me, just pretend I don't exist. You. Cromwell pointed at Gao Qiang, his lips moved slightly, and he was about to say something. But the next moment, the last sailboat that helped Bloody Dawn withstand gunfire was sunk. Countless firepower finally poured into Bloody Dawn. A violent explosion came from behind, and a large amount of sawdust flew up, knocking Cromwell directly into the sea. Just a little bit closer. Relying on its speed advantage, the Bloody Dawn was able to move itself to the side of a miniature island just a few inches away. At that time, you can pass through the island and avoid the gunfire of most warships in the distance. This is also the terrain advantage brought by archipelago waters like Lifeng Islands. With Bloody Dawn's movement speed, it is not difficult to withdraw from this battle. It's a pity that it was just a little bit short. Feeling the burnt smell coming from his back, Cromwell, who fell into the deep sea, felt that his consciousness was getting more and more blurred. In the last moment when his consciousness still existed, the outside world was reflected in Cromwell's eyes like a scrolling lantern. He saw that on the deck of the Meteor, the sea people had begun to retreat in an orderly manner. He saw the sea level in the distance. Several iron chains stretched out from the sea water, tied to the hull of the Storm Messenger, and dragged the entire miracle ship into the deep sea. It seems that knowing that they can't outrun the new fleet, the sea people chose to pull the miracle ship directly into the water. Although doing so will damage the hull of the Storm Messenger, it is better than being completely destroyed. Unlike the sea people, the blood people who can't escape through the seabed are now all trapped in the Lifeng Islands by the flames on the sea surface. Sea people. The miracle ship finally fell into the hands of the sea people. After saying this last sentence, Cromwell's consciousness completely fell into a blur. The initiator of the great expedition has died, and this great expedition is declared to have ended in failure. The reminder sound of the war game spread to the ears of every vampire lord participating in the great expedition. But at this moment, the fifth channel is still in great chaos. No one cares about Cromwell. What they care about is that the disguise of the vampires has been completely torn off. The fifth channel will never be able to return to the peace of the past. And after Cromwell's death, a series of artillery fire directly enveloped the Bloody Dawn. The miracle ship that returned from hell finally returned to hell again. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 212. Just when the Bloody Dawn completely sank. In front of Gao Qiang, the sea breeze suddenly stopped blowing, and the burning flames were fixed in place. You witnessed the end of a miracle, and witnessing the end of a miracle is a miracle in itself. Since you are in the third level world, your miracle path will be upgraded to third level. In the sea where the Bloody Dawn sank, a hoarse voice came from underwater. What do you want? It was a scene similar to the previous two times. But this time, Gao Qiang had an idea in advance. Even if the strength of the Lord's path is roughly the same, the third level Lord's path is also a level that can provide good various blessings. He can try to ask for something that looks more greedy. For example, I want to make the upper limit of the technology tree disappear. Gao Qiang also has his own thoughts when making this wish. Previously in the Wisdom Hub of the Academy. Although the comments of the know-it-all are very subjective, they also have their merits. For example, although the fallen empire has mastered all the technologies in this war game at the beginning, as well as a top-level combat force left from ancient times. But in most cases, these combat forces are theoretically achievable by others. For example, in this age of exploration, the meteor built by the company is like this. Under the premise of locking the upper limit of technology, every progress of others is equivalent to their own regression. The only way to solve this problem is to break through the shackles of the technology tree. The longer the technology tree, the longer it takes for others to study, and the greater the gap with themselves. The voice in the sea did not remain silent for a long time. Soon, the voice sounded again, "Not enough." What is not enough? Gao Qiang realized that this voice was a little different from the previous ones. After the previous times of being stuck, they would ask to make a wish again, which means that the other party could not satisfy their wishes at all. And this time, the miracle path did not say that it could not do this, but just said that something was not enough. So, is it that the prerequisite is not met, or is the third level Lord path not enough to obtain such a strong ability? However, just when Gao Qiang wanted to make a new wish, the voice from under the sea sounded again. "Your wish has been fulfilled." What? Without giving Gao Qiang a chance to hesitate, a new metal rose from the bottom of the sea and flew towards Gao Qiang. This time, the metal was engraved with the scene of the gate of hell. And in the center of the gate was a blind eye. As the metal was engraved into Gao Qiang's personal panel, the world in front of him finally stopped stagnating. The sea breeze scorched by the flames blew in his face. At the same time, Gao Qiang saw the power he had gained in the third level miracle path in his personal interface. Miracle, Level 3. Reread. Introduction. The technology tree is like a short novel with a visible end. After we finish reading it once, we can always choose to read it again. Effect 1. When you join a war game, you can choose whether to allow all players in this game to continue to study the technology tree in a cycle after studying all the contents of the technology tree. Effect 2. When researching technology in a cycle, a small amount of improvement will be obtained after each successful research. Effect 3. When the review effect takes effect, since the technology tree has no upper limit, vigilance will no longer be a legitimate reason for war. Surely, has my wish been fulfilled in this way? Gao Qiang looked at the effect of the review. In a sense, this is different from what he thought of breaking through the upper limit of the technology tree. According to Gao Qiang's idea, breaking through the upper limit of the technology tree should be to complete the research of all the technologies of this era, and then continue to research the technology of the next era. The effect of the review is to copy and paste the existing technology to the back of the technology tree for re-research at the cost of losing vigilance war. Although the number has doubled, the total amount of technology has not changed, and it is still the same technology. As for how much effect it can play, it will only be known in the next war game. Gao Qiang paid attention to the Lord's passage during this time. The battle situation on the sea is changing every moment. The fleet led by 3 super dreadnoughts has approached the waters of the Lifeng Islands. A large amount of artillery fire crushed the fleet belonging to the Blood Clan at close range. Well-made warships were torn apart by dense artillery fire. After a while, the battleships finally reached the distance that the Blood Clan fleet could attack. They could have continued to attack outside the range of the Blood Clan, but they simply disdained to do so. Soon, the battleships blocked every seaport in the Lifeng Islands, making all the Blood Clan warships trapped. After the battleships arrived, the company's fleet finally managed to catch its breath under the siege of the Sea Clan because of the retreat of the Sea Clan. The first thing the meteor did when it was freed was to continuously fire mortar shells at the sea area around it. Countless shells exploded in the air, turning into pieces of tiny marbles and smashing into the sea water. It seemed that Henry wanted to vent all his anger on the Sea Clan who had not yet evacuated. The sea water was immediately dyed red by the blood of the sea creatures. Under the effect of the crash, the meteor almost ignored the resistance of the sea water, and each shell could achieve a real result. Facing the wrath of the meteor, the sea creatures could only continue to dive deep to avoid the firepower of the meteor. Crack! Deep in the seabed, beside Chao-Chi. As the diving depth increased, under the water pressure, the Stormbringer made a sound of being overwhelmed. Tiny cracks gradually appeared on the weathered Stormbringer ship. Chao-Chi rarely showed a distressed look. "Wait, What is this? Looking at the sudden change in front of him, Chao Chi widened his eyes. As the Stormbringer gradually sank to the bottom of the sea, a glimmer of light gradually emerged from the cracks of the Stormbringer, as if responding to the call of the Stormbringer. In the deep sea, the wreckage of the Bloody Dawn also gradually emitted a murmur. You get the clue, the trial of the legendary explorer Duke of Ocean. Relying on the advantage of their racial characteristics, the Sea Clan finally left the battlefield successfully after leaving behind a pile of corpses. After the Sea Clan fled, the company's firepower could only be vented on the Blood Clan fleet. The Blood Clan fleet, which had been hit hard, finally came to an end. And all this was seen by the eyes in the dark. Suddenly, Long Xianyeo was stunned for a moment, and looked at the surrounding islands with suspicion, as if he had received some news. In the end, there was really nothing to find. Then he walked to Gao Qiang's side and said, "General Mike's personal guards want to contact you. According to what they said, General Mike wants to talk to you about counterattack. And, they congratulate you on a hearty victory. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 213. Zaka, the governor of Yashin Island in the 9th channel, and Cromwell, the owner of the miracle ship in the 5th channel. In the headquarters of the 1st channel, Mike was holding a pipe and squinting at the information in his hand. Even if I take action personally, I may not be able to get rid of both of them within a year. General Mike, you took it backwards. A helpless tone came from the side. I know. Mike silently adjusted the information in his hand. Forget it, this isn't important. After casually putting the information aside, Mike took off the pipe from the corner of his mouth and looked at the group of people in front of him. So, you star-hanging bastards grew up eating shit. I lost control of 4 channels in a row, but I was allowed to get 2 back by myself. But General Mike, you strongly requested that we send at least 20 ironclad ships to ensure your safety. Shut up. Mike walked up to the Major General who had just spoken and poked the other person's heart with the pipe in his hand. I want to see the results of the battle. Talk to me with your actual results instead of sophistry. Do you understand? After listening to Mike's words, the Major General nodded helplessly and said no more words. He picked up the pipe in his mouth again. After Mike glanced at everyone, he turned around with his hands behind his back. But he's right. Because of the wise leadership of this 5-star admiral, we currently retain more than 20 top-level manpower. And we also have tens of thousands of brave lords. Leading a group of people to the rooftop of the territory, countless cheers came from all directions. Mike naturally accepted all the cheers and praises without hesitation. Good morning, soldiers, what you are seeing now is General Mike, the youngest 5-star general in the military. Oh! Listening to the cheers in their ears, several military members whose military uniforms were obviously different from others raised their foreheads and shook their heads helplessly. Mike is not only a 5-star general in the military, but also a well-deserved star in the military. In Mike's words, in the entire military headquarters, except for himself, the other 5-star generals and even several marshals are all deadliest people. He dared to criticize the generalissimo for his radical behavior, and he was also good at using public opinion packaging. This made Mike wildly sought after by the younger generation of the military. After deciding to support the war game, they were enthusiastically followed by the younger generation of the military. At the same time, he was also the culprit that made this simple operation spiral out of control. On the rooftop, Mike was clearly enjoying his own stage. These lords who were cheering for him gathered together the power of tens of thousands of warships. Even if these forces are dispersed to 9 major channels, each channel can be allocated more than 1,000 ships. Of course, he won't do that. Mike is the proposer and loyal supporter of the superior firepower theory among the military. He never fights tough battles where his firepower is 3 times weaker than the enemy's. This is also the reason why Mike has been hiding from the public in recent years. He is accumulating combat power and waiting for an opportunity. Now, the trade chains of several large island governors in the 9th channel have been cut off by the company because of Zaka's death. The 5th passage is also about to face a greater degree of revenge from the company because of Cromwell's great expedition. Is there any better opportunity than now? Mike roughly estimated that if we went out collectively now, the military's firepower would be 10 times that of the blood or sea tribes scattered in various waterways. Soldiers, I know you have been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Mike slowly opened his mouth and said, "The bunch of deadbeats at the general headquarters will only advise us to be patient and order us to give up. But now, I stand with you. You must know that a flock of sheep led by a lion will eventually defeat a flock of lions led by a sheep. And I am the lion, and you are the sheep that I lead." Oh. Seeing the mood of the military lords below getting higher and higher, Mike nodded with satisfaction. Now, it's time to attack, bring all 9 major waterways under our control, and establish victory in this war game. As Mike's speech ended, countless lords belonging to the military department receded like the tide. As a result, a mighty sea of warships appeared on the sea surface of the 1st channel, heading towards the intersection between the channels. Turning around with satisfaction, Mike was stopped in place by his own bodyguards. Seeing Mike frowning, the guard hurriedly said, "We have contacted the people around the Lord of the 5th channel. Meeting with him should have a positive impact on your reputation." "What is that, Bayanian?" "No, actually, according to our intelligence, Colonel Bayanian did not participate in this war game. The other party is actually—" "That's enough." Mike interrupted the guard. He looked towards the personal guards. As a personal guard of his 5-star general, combat effectiveness was secondary, and the most important skill was to learn how to operate. But this time, Mike just said 2 words about the personal guard's operational methods: superfluous. Talents are useful but not useful, slaves are useful but useless. "But, I don't need so many unusable talents, do you understand what I mean?" The guard nodded in understanding. "So, are you still going to meet that person?" "Why not?" Mike held a pipe in his mouth, with an unfathomable expression. "One more thing, never try to guess the thoughts of a 5-star admiral. So, they know the situation here." Around the Lifeng Islands, Gao Qiang turned his head and asked Long Xianyeo while watching the past heavenly kingdom cleaning up the battlefield. Listening to what Long Xianyeo meant, the military seemed to have been observing him all the time. However, when facing the siege of the Blood Clan, the military obviously had no intention of helping. Long Xianyeo shook his head, indicating that he didn't know much about the situation in the military. "According to my speculation, the people who are observing us have some connection with the military, but they are not completely the group of people in the military intelligence network. Remember what I said earlier, the military has a group of special forces. The people who are secretly observing us should be from the special forces used by the military to plunder land. They are the elite among the elites, each of them is carefully selected, and their personal talents are 1 in a million." As she spoke, Long Xianyeo bit her lip. If it was that group of people, they would be fully capable of rescuing Long Xiwen from Cromwell. But just as they watched Gao Qiang being besieged by the Blood Clan fleet, they would not rescue people who had nothing to do with them. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De De. Chapter 214. Hi. What are you talking about? At this time, a jumping voice came from beside the 2 people, interrupting Long Xianyeo's sad mood. Gao Qiang looked sideways and saw that a lowly face was almost sticking to his face. "Oh, by the way, it seems that I haven't introduced myself to the Lord yet. Huan's hero smiled, showing a small tiger tooth, and put her hand on her chest. I am Huan's hero, and I am also the captain of the super dreadnought ship Tomorrow Star. Gao Qiang glanced at the rising star docked next to him. The huge hull directly blocked the waters of the Leifeng Islands, preventing other ships from advancing or retreating. So this is what you are doing. Oh, I just wanted to ask when we can go back and rest. Huan's hero stretched and yawned. I've been running on the sea for a month, and Xiaobai is completely bored. Who is Xiaobai? Is it your pet? Gao Qiang said subconsciously. Xiaobai, it's almost a pet. Huan's hero pointed at the continuous shield in the distance, causing Bai Hexio to sneeze while standing on the deck. Which bastard is scolding me? Bai Hexio wiped his nose and asked in confusion. Ahem. At this time, a heavy cough suddenly came. Gao Qiang looked along the source of the sound, but his vision was completely blocked by the Star of Tomorrow, and he couldn't see anything. After getting no response for a long time, voices continued to come from over there. Governor Henry, please come and talk to us. A sailor belonging to the company shouted loudly. Gao Qiang didn't speak, but looked at Huan's hero silently. The small sea area has been blocked by Huan's hero. Hey! Huan's hero had no idea that she was blocking Gao Qiang's path. Instead, he said directly, Lord, please go to my ship. My ship is quite big. Well, it's much better than this ship. Listening to Huan's hero's words, Dakai turned his head to the side with some dissatisfaction. Okay, that's what's hero said. Juluo didn't know when he started to walk out, and he was trying to calm Dakai's mood at the moment. What's more, no one in the world can build a warship of the level of Tomorrow Star, right? Hearing this, Dakai nodded, agreeing with Juluo's remarks. Unable to resist being blocked by Huan's hero, the group finally had no choice but to move to the Star of Tomorrow. Arriving here, due to the elevation, Gao Qiang also saw Governor Henry, who had been waiting for a long time. Henry's meteor has arrived next to the Star of Tomorrow. Now seeing Gao Qiang appear on the deck of the Star of Tomorrow, Henry squinted and stroked his mustache. It's true that a hero comes from a boy. I didn't expect that this fleet, which can dominate the entire sea, actually comes from such a young boy. Ahem, they are all born well, and their ancestors left many things behind, Gao Qiang said truthfully. Henry hummed twice with a half-smile. We don't care about this. What I want to say is that the company will not treat every maritime citizen who loves the company badly. Consider these as your bounty. While speaking, Henry took out a wooden box from his hand and threw it far away to the Star of Tomorrow. Gao Qiang opened the wooden box and took a look. Inside the wooden box is a piece of parchment with the seal of Pan-Ocean Free Trade Company. If you don't read the content, you'll find something strange like a devil's contract. But in fact, this is just a beautifully crafted contract. Recruitment permission, company. Introduction, the highest level recruiting license from the company. After use, you can train all arms of the company system without paying additional patent fees. Effect, unlock the units Navy Soldier, Elite Marine Soldier, and Bounty Hunter / Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida Di. Chapter 215. The junction of the second and fifth channels. The sea surface has been covered by hundreds of military warships. Mike stood on a seemingly tattered wooden boat, holding a pipe, squinting at the blazing sun at noon. It seems that our talent has no concept of punctuality. The guard smiled at the side. You also know that the situation on the sea is very complicated, and it is normal to be a little delayed. Mike didn't speak, of course he knew this. The sea is changeable, even if it is within the prescribed channel, no one dares to say that he can arrive on time. And he said this for his own purpose. The guard wiped the sweat on his head. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he stretched out his hand to point to the end of the sea level. "Look, is that them?" "Huh." Mike glanced at it indifferently at first, and then froze in place. The pipe at the corner of his mouth fell to the ground unconsciously. Mike couldn't help but cursed. "Shit, Aunt Susan's husband next door, is the other side's war game strong? Is there anyone who can explain to me what the hell that is?" In Mike's vision, a well-trained and modern Navy fleet is heading towards him. Although he is standing on the sea in the age of discovery, Mike has the illusion that he is home. When he was a 5-star admiral, the ocean fleet he controlled in reality was less than twice as strong as this, which was completely below the bottom line of his firepower advantage theory. Is the theme of this era really adventure and exploration? Mike subconsciously opened the panel and wiped his eyes. He even suspected that he might have seen the wrong era. Maybe now is the era of large ships bombarding each other? "Admiral Mike, Admiral Mike." The guard shook Mike's body gently. "The other fleet is coming, Admiral Mike." "I know." Mike pushed the guard away, bent down with trembling hands to pick up the pipe, and put it in his mouth with forced calmness. "Next time, you'd better tell me how many warships the other side has in advance." If he had known that the other side had a fleet of this size, Mike would have brought more than 100 warships when he came. After scolding the guards, Mike finally locked his expression and returned to a calm state, quietly looking at the leader standing on the bow of the opposite flagship. A little girl. Huan's hero naturally saw Mike's eyes. Then she showed a small tiger tooth and pointed to the sky with one hand. "Send them a welcome gift." Boom boom boom. Several gorgeous shells shot into the air, and beautiful fireworks exploded in the sky. At this time, the Star of Tomorrow also successfully connected with Mike's flagship. A simple ramp was placed down, becoming a moving bridge between the two ships. And Mike then stood in front of Huan's hero, looking down at Huan's hero's petite body. "I guess this is..." Mike suddenly got stuck, thinking that he had interrupted the guard's words before, so he didn't know the other person's name at all. "Gao Qiang," the guard reminded in a low voice. "Oh, yes, I guess this is Lord Gao Qiang, right?" While speaking, Mike stretched out a hand towards Huan's hero. At the same time, he secretly complained in his heart, which girl would be named Gao Qiang. However, facing the hand stretched out by Mike, Huan's hero dodged it. Sitting on a turret, Huan's hero looked at Mike with disgust, which made Mike very embarrassed. Fortunately, Huan's hero immediately stretched out her hand to the side, breaking the awkward atmosphere. "If you want to find the Lord, look, he is over there basking in the sun." In front of the cabin door of the Star of Tomorrow, Gao Qiang was lying naked on the deck basking in the sun. There were also Juluo and a few others dressed in the same way, and they were all wearing simple clothes. At this moment, Huan's hero mentioned herself. Gao Qiang sat up and yawned. "So we've arrived." The battleship fleet led by 3 super dreadnoughts can bring a sense of security that is really not comparable to the 2 cruisers before. Although cruisers are already very good compared to ironclad ships. But after the arrival of the large force, they can only become scrap metal dragged away by the former heaven. As for the company's recruitment permit, it was also given to Long Xianyao by Gao Qiang. This kind of item for recruiting specific soldiers is not very useful to him. Looking at Gao Qiang's appearance, Mike on the side was relieved. It would be too embarrassing if a group of general officers under his command could not beat a little girl. Although he had a lot of thoughts in his mind. But in the eyes of outsiders, Mike still maintained a calm attitude. "I guess this is Lord Gao Qiang, it's really a hero in his youth, haha." Gao Qiang looked at Mike strangely. Why did he have an illusion that Henry seemed to have said this before? But as the saying goes, don't hit a smiling person. Now Mike didn't show any hostility, and Gao Qiang was naturally the same. This must be the most dazzling 5-star general in the military, General Mike. Seeing is believing, haha. Although the word most dazzling is not suitable to describe a general. But for Mike, it is obviously very useful. So the two looked at each other and laughed awkwardly at the same time. Ha ha ha. After two awkward laughs, Gao Qiang continued to ask, so General Mike asked me here, I guess there must be something to talk about. No. Mike shook his head. Looking deeply at the sea level in the distance, in fact, it's just a simple meeting. In fact, this war game is over. Mike took off his pipe and commented, with my 5-star general personally commanding, we only need less than 3 months to take over 2 waterways. Then, we can quickly expand the results through the existing 4 waterways and eliminate those foreign lords. If things go as expected by this general, the military will be able to sweep the 9 waterways before Christmas this year and go back to celebrate the new year in a victorious manner. And you? Mike pointed at Gao Qiang with his pipe. Just stay here and bask in the sun like you are now. War is not a farce for children, nor is it a place to show heroism. Just as Mike finished speaking, a long-haired man in a lieutenant colonel's uniform jumped to Mike's side. The guards immediately stood behind Mike vigilantly. But the long-haired man did not continue to make any radical moves. He just slowly opened his mouth to remind him, General Mike, when it comes to personal heroism, isn't that what you admire most? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 216. Shut up, how can you talk to a general like that? The guard scolded. Gao Qiang, on the other hand, looked at the lieutenant colonel with Mike with a curious look. Seeing Gao Qiang and Mike looking at him, the long-haired man put one fist on his chest, put the other hand behind his back, and bowed gently to the two. Lieutenant Colonel Yuloi of the Special Operations Force, hello. At this moment, Long Xianyeo, who was wearing a swimsuit, came to Gao Qiang's side and whispered, the Special Operations Force does not belong to General Mike's system. Although the other party is only a lieutenant colonel, the decision will not be affected by General Mike. As she spoke, Long Xianyeo looked at Yuloi with some emotion. If she guessed correctly, the eyes that stared at Gao Qiang in the Lifeng Islands before also came from Yuloi's Special Operations Force. Maybe they have always had information about the Tenglong group in their hands. It was only because they did not belong to the same system as General Mike that Long Xianyeo could not get this information from the military's intelligence department. And the one who completely watched Long Xiwen and Gao Qiang and even himself die should also be the special forces. Seeing Long Xianyeo staring at him with such hatred all the way, Yuloi smiled casually. Although I don't know where I offended this girl, it should not be the time for us to have an internal conflict now. Then Yuloi turned his head to look at Mike. If the general doesn't run away, it will be too late. Mike couldn't help frowning. What are you guys going to do again? Don't you see that the general is still here? The general orders you to stop all your subsequent actions. From Yuloi's words, Mike vaguely heard that they seemed to want to target Gao Qiang. But from General Mike's point of view, with the current firepower, it is simply unreasonable to fall out with Gao Qiang. However, Yuloi shook his head. General, I just said that now is not the time to have an internal conflict. What do you mean? Mike frowned. So sometimes he also hates the special forces. On the one hand, they rely on the intelligence of the intelligence department, but on the other hand, they are unwilling to share the intelligence they have collected with the intelligence department. It seems that only this near-God perspective can maintain their mystery. Therefore, even if this unit has turned the tide in many battles, it is not very popular with Mike. Yuloi sighed deeply. Sorry, General, you can't die now. Hey, you. Hearing Yuloi's creepy words, the guards immediately stepped forward and wanted to suppress Yoloi. But the next moment, Yoloi kicked the guards to the ground, and he quickly stepped forward and hijacked Mike in his hands. Huan's hero on the side watched the scene with great interest, and had no intention of stopping it. "What are you going to do?" Mike's pipe fell to the ground at this moment, and he asked Yoloi angrily. "You will be brought to the military court if you do this." "Sorry, General." Yoloi just said sorry lightly, and then a mechanical claw stretched out from his sleeve, hooked the mast of a military warship and pulled himself over. Just as the two left the Star of Tomorrow, a series of explosions occurred on the deck of the Star of Tomorrow. Cough, cough, cough. Gao Qiang stood up with a cough, but found that he had come to the back of the hatch. At the last moment of the artillery attack, Huan's hero saved him. Looking to the side, Long Xianyao and others were rescued because they were near the hatch like him. And those who were far away from the deck were not so lucky. I saw that General Mike's guards were divided into dozens of pieces by the explosion, and intestines mixed with blood and flesh were sprayed all over the deck. There were also many sailors recruited by Long Xianyao who were treated the same. Just now, who attacked the Star of Tomorrow? Standing in the captain's room, Gao Qiang looked at the various observation parameters of the Star of Tomorrow. It seemed that there was nothing wrong with each parameter. Until the next moment, several huge ships broke through the waves from under the sea level. Among them were the Meteor and Stormbringer that Gao Qiang had seen. There was also a strange ship that Gao Qiang had never seen before. The ship was designed with sharp edges and corners, with a diamond-shaped upper cover protecting the entire deck of the ship, and there was no design such as masts. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was the huge ram that the ship had. With the posture of breaking the waves just now, if the ram suddenly protruded from underwater, I am afraid that any warship would be torn apart by it. "Yes, the Nether Deep Sea." A voice sounded in Gao Qiang's ears. Turning his head, Zhu, who was wearing a swimsuit, was holding the storybook compiled by our company in his hand. It is rumored that the birth of the Nether Deep Sea originated from a sad story. Looking at the three miraculous ships in the distance, Zhu slowly explained. The birth of the Nether Deep Sea originated from the only son of a governor of a large island. The unknown only son could have inherited the governor's fleet, wealth, and even power after the governor's death. But he didn't care. What he wanted was always very simple. The joy of adventure. The only son was always looking forward to the legendary adventurers. He also wanted to become a legend on the sea. So without the governor's knowledge, he took his lover and countless gold and silver treasures and embarked on the road of seeking adventure. And on the same night when the ship set sail, he was pushed into the sea by the person he loved most. Only then did he know that the person he loved had already fallen in love with someone else, a real adventurer. And he, the governor's only son, was just a link in the other's adventure. A tool to provide wealth. The deep cold of the deep sea was not as cold as the heart, and the endless darkness could not cover the darkness that surged in his heart. On that night, the huge waves overturned the warship belonging to the governor's only son. Just like breaking the wings of adventure, the mast was ruthlessly broken. And the raging waves swept the entire warship and all the treasures on it into the seabed. No one has ever seen the couple of adventurers again. But after that, there was a new legend on the ocean. A ship wandering in the depths of the sea. People can't guess it's good or evil. All we know is that sometimes it will send lovers in distress to the nearest port. And more often, it will violently rush out from under the sea and crush a ship with its invincible ram. The story is 1,000 years old. The ship was gradually called the Netherworld Deep Sea by the fishermen on the sea. It is said that only lovers can drive its power. And now, that lover is Lord of all people. Am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 217. Zaka. Looking at the figure that appeared on the deck of the Nether Deep Sea, Gao Qiang, who had just finished listening to the story, was stunned for a moment. I really didn't expect that Zaka was actually a person with a bitter love. At this time, Chao Chi on the Stormbringer was quietly looking at the properties of the Nether Deep Sea. Nether Deep Sea, Miracle. Introduction: a miracle ship driven by the death of a bitter lover, and it will only be driven by love. The deeper the love, the stronger the power of miracle. Features: Deep Sea Ship, Nether Love, Underwater Protection. Deep Sea Ship: when this ship is present, it can make up to 3 ships including itself enter a non-destructive deep diving state. Nether Love: when love reaches a certain level, it will increase the ramming attack power, and the maximum will not exceed 20 times the original attack power. Underwater Protection: this ship will not seep water. Okay, the strange thing that Zaka is a bitter lover can be put aside for now. Gao Qiang is still puzzled. Why did the meteor, which had just attacked the Blood Clan, appear next to the Stormbringer and the Netherworld Deep Sea? Could it be because Henry had met with an accident? However, Gao Qiang's idea was immediately overturned. Like Zaka, Henry's voice soon appeared on the meteor. This means that the company led by Henry did not conflict with the Sea Clan and Zaka and others. Even, they vaguely reached a united front. The round of attacks on the Star of Tomorrow just now was the work of the meteor. As if it knew that Gao Qiang and others would be puzzled. In a place that many people could not see. Henry stroked his mustache and snorted. Everything in the world is impermanent. It's a pity that your survival poses a greater threat to the company than the benefits you can provide. If the company hadn't suddenly issued an order to attack, perhaps we could become friends. What a pity, what a pity. As Henry cried out in regret, countless warships belonging to the company came from all directions. Among them was the fleet of the 5th Channel. There are also fleets from the 2nd Channel and even the company's fleets deployed in other channels. They didn't know that there was such a strong force hidden in the Fog City before. But now they know. According to the resolution of the company's senior board of directors, this fleet that can change the situation at sea must be completely destroyed before it can really threaten the company. In this war, the fleet dispatched by the company is unprecedentedly large. The number of warships alone has reached a terrifying 5,000. In addition, because Mike was present at the same time, the Blood Clan and the company reluctantly put aside their prejudices. After the Blood Clan promised to kill all the human lords and leave the 9 major channels forever, the company gladly accepted their request for a crusade. What the company didn't expect was that in this war, the number of warships dispatched by the Blood Clan actually reached a terrifying 2,000. On the other hand, the Underwater Sea Clan also reached a similar treaty with the company. But unlike the Blood Clan, the Sea Clan does not have warships. Those warriors who can board directly from underwater are the best combat power that the Sea Clan can bring out. Without the restriction of meteor this time, Chao Chi believed that he could definitely get the best results. Captain, Lord, our sonar shows that a large number of fish creatures are gathering under the sea, and the number may have exceeded 1 million. After several monitors reported, the alarm of tomorrow's star was urgently sounded. The harsh sound spread throughout the fleet. Almost all battleships raised their guns and prepared to shoot in coordination with tomorrow's star. All this was naturally seen by Yuloi, who returned to the military warship. Put the frightened Mike aside. Yuloi squinted and looked into the distance. 200 against 10,000. It's really a disadvantage among disadvantages. Is it, General Mike? After gradually coming to his senses, Mike snorted coldly. He could naturally see at this moment that the other party was coming for Gao Qiang and himself. As an indigenous force, it was really too stupid to regard the company as a person who was on the same front with him. Whether the Lord is dead or alive, it doesn't matter to the company. Race is not a reasonable reason to form an alliance with the company. Do they think they can defeat me? Mike said coldly. He glanced at the body of his personal guard on the Star of Tomorrow next to him. Mike put his hand on a ruby on the steering wheel. In an instant, the appearance of the hundreds of warships surrounding Mike changed. More than 20 of them took off their camouflage and turned into ironclad ships. The rest of the warships were also giant warships with more than 3 floors, and the number of cannons on both sides of each warship alone was no less than 200. As the originator of the theory of superior firepower, how could Mike not leave some tricks for himself when sailing alone on the channel? The broken ship carrying him at the moment is actually a miracle ship. The Unbreakable Phoenix, Miracle. Introduction: a legendary ship that has undergone hundreds of major repairs. It is said that countless generations of masters have died on it. However, thousands of major damages have not only failed to cause it to sink, but also given it the power of brilliance. Features: sinking, brilliance, glory. Sinking: when this warship is present, it can camouflage its own fleet, making all warships appear to be reduced by 1 to 3 levels. Brilliant: when the camouflage is removed, the firepower of all our warships will be increased by 30% and the speed will be increased by 50% for a certain period of time. Glory: when the Phoenix is damaged, it will enter a self-repair state and cannot be sunk before being severely damaged 10 times in each battle. It seems that the military is ready to counterattack. The changes in Mike's fleet were naturally seen by Gao Qiang. Then we should do something. The Fallen Empire declares war on the Pan-Ocean Free Trade Company. War reason: vigilance. The Blood Clan declares war on the human race. War reason: total war. The Sea Clan declares war on the human race. War reason: total war. Several declarations of war appeared almost at the same time. Several war interfaces appeared in front of Gao Qiang at the same time. In the interface of total war, tens of thousands of military lords were arranged in a long line, and Gao Qiang's name was naturally squeezed in the middle, becoming an inconspicuous row of words. The opponents were the Blood Clan and Sea Clan lords, with a total of more than 10,000. After the destruction of the miracle ship, the company defected, and Chao Qi and others instigated. The final battle of this war game was finally launched. Let them taste our power. Baihexia drove the Eternal Shield and took the lead in launching a grenade attack. Countless solid incendiary bombs were fired, forming a wall of fire on the sea surface, trying to separate the company's warships. And Gao Qiang's location. The Star of Tomorrow has mobilized the sonar to the maximum extent. Under the leadership of the Star of Tomorrow, the entire battleship fleet was dropping depth charges, as if to isolate the risk of the Sea Clan boarding the ship. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De Di. Chapter 218. Leave the front to me. Henry straightened his beard and chuckled. After saying that, the meteor took the first step and distanced itself from the Stormbringer and the netherworld deep sea. Although the firewall arranged by the Eternal Shield burned very brightly. But the power of just one ship cannot ignite the entire sea. The company's fleet gradually surrounded the center from all directions. As the meteor's mortars began pouring fire into the sky, countless small projectiles fell like raindrops, creating columns of water rising into the sky on the sea. It is known that the penetration of these projectiles is not sufficient for a super dreadnought. Therefore, most of Henry's firepower was placed on suppressing the military headquarters. At this moment, the military warships were suppressed by the meteor. While tired of dealing with it, it also lost the ability to counterattack other warships. Tiskuloi lowered his head and curled his lips. The company's meteor ranks high among all kinds of miracle ships, and can almost be treated as the ultimate booze. If possible, he really didn't want to fight the meteor. But General Mike, you can't die yet. The next time Yuloi looked up, his eyes had changed slightly. He gently stretched his hand toward the sea, and then made a pulling motion. That's when Yuloi did so. The sonar in front of Gao Qiang showed that dozens of new reactions suddenly appeared under the sea. Crash. Abandoned sunken ships covered with moss emerged from the sea and passed sideways on the outside of the fleet, turning into human shields to help the fleet withstand damage. Every member of the Special Operations Force has a unique talent, and so does Yolo Y. His personal talent is called Spirit Binding. Binding Spirit. Effect: after you kill your subjects, you can attach their souls to the dead objects, giving them the power to turn silence into movement. Note: this behavior will result in a significant reduction in the loyalty of your territorial citizens. In the early days, Euroa would only use this ability as a trap, creating some existences similar to earthbound spirits to attack enemies close to the trap. But after being tested in many war games and doing many things for the military, Yolo Y has developed this ability to the extreme. These giant ships currently used as human shields are all his masterpieces. The sea may be empty. But in the age of discovery, there will never be a shortage of giant ships lying silent on the bottom of the sea. This sea has already buried countless pioneers. Now he only needs to consume one territorial citizen to easily make the silent pioneers stand up and fight for him, so why not? As for the loyalty of the people, he doesn't need the loyalty of his subjects at all. Yolo Y looked aside. On a warship, countless iron cages were hung, and the cages contained all their own citizens. The citizens were looking at him with malicious eyes. Facing these looks, Yolo Y just smiled indifferently. All the sacrifices are worth it. On that ship were other members of the Special Operations Force. Now under Euroa's instructions, countless weapons soaked in Euroa's blood directly pierced the bodies of the people in the territory. As the blood soaked into the bodies of those people. According to the judgment, the deaths of these territorial citizens are all related to Yolo Y. So the next moment, the whole sea was shaking. Get out of the way of the civilians. Yolo Y looked at where Gao Qiang was and spoke slowly. Otherwise, I don't mind getting rid of you together. Interesting. Hearing Euroa's tone of concern and threat coming from outside the captain's room. You really can't underestimate other lords. Gao Qiang chuckled, then nodded to Huan's hero next to him. Yeah, do you want to watch their performance? Huan's hero responded, and then an order was issued from the Star of Tomorrow. The battleship group slowed down its artillery bombardment of distant fleets and began to gather around the Star of Tomorrow. After the battleship group shrunk, the larger stage on the sea was left to the military. A wise choice, civilian. After Yolo Y finished speaking slowly, the ripples on the sea surface expanded rapidly. Thousands of moss-covered warships broke through the waves. These warships rushed into the company's fleet and fired countless volleys of artillery fire, quickly confusing the situation with a crazy attitude that was completely unafraid of casualties. The Battle of Annihilation originally planned by the company instantly turned into a tug of war. The price for doing this is the death of all the people in Yolo Y's territory. From now on, he will not gain the trust of any people in this war game. Yeah, what a scary young man. Above the kingdom of the past, Lian Qian covered half of her face with a fan, looking at the situation on the sea surface and speaking softly. Stand high and see far. Sitting aboard the heavenly kingdom of the past, which is at the highest altitude, Lian Qian can almost sweep away the situation on the sea. Although most of the firepower of those sunken ships awakened by the spirit-binding talent has been lost. But with the help of hundreds of giant ships from the military department, it can still cause considerable losses to the company. Although there are thousands of warships on the company's side, most of them are sailboats. When facing large warships or even ironclad ships with more than 3 floors, the effect of boosting momentum of this kind of ship is far greater than the actual threat it can cause. And because it is unmanned, when the sunken ship breaks into the enemy fleet, there is no need to worry about the risk of being boarded by the Blood Clan. Yolo Y's purpose has always been very clear. Withstanding the enemy's charge, the military can gradually take control of the war. Judging from the current situation, the military is indeed gaining an advantage bit by bit. Ha ha ha, that's it. Mike laughed wantonly a few times. Crush them and let them taste our power. Things are not that simple. In the Star of Tomorrow, staring at the movement of each light spot in the sonar, Huan's hero suddenly spoke. The guys under the water, they should not be counted. Sure enough, the next moment after Huan's hero finished speaking, the sunken ship suddenly shook violently. It was the Sea Clan that was chiseling the skeletons of the sunken ships at the bottom of the sunken ships. It has been soaked in sea water for many years. The frames of these ships are quite fragile. Therefore, once the frames are damaged, they will almost fall apart. After seeing this scene, Huan's hero jumped up. Lord, it may be a little dangerous next. In the past heaven, Lian Qian waved her hand behind her. Everyone, prepare the artillery. After arranging the artillery layout, Lian Qian took a deep glance at the sea in the distance. Those miracle ships should also move. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 219. It was exactly as Lian Qian expected. Just as the sea tribe began to besiege the sunken ship, there was a slight sound of entering the water, and the netherworld deep sea lost its trace on the sea. At this time, the Star of Tomorrow suddenly marked an empty sea area. That's it, attack. Boom boom boom. The barrage will be overshadowed by the marked waters. However, because there is no crash attribute of the meteor, it is difficult for a simple artillery attack to cause damage to the netherworld deep in the deep submersible state. Often before successfully hitting the netherworld deep sea, the resistance of the water flow will cause the cannonball to lose its original power. At this time, in the picture displayed by the sonar, a series of light spots centered on the Star of Tomorrow were rapidly disappearing from the outside to the inside. Depth charges deployed underwater are being removed quickly. Staring at the data on the sonar, Zhuoluo explained to Gao Qiang. With the technical power of the Sea Clan, it is almost impossible to dismantle these depth bombs. In this case, there is only one possibility left. They are using the lives of soldiers to fight thunder. At this moment, Huan's hero has completely entered the command state, and instructions for coordinate deployment are being quickly issued by Huan's hero. On the other side, the battleship's depth charge ejection device was activated at full capacity, quickly filling the vacant positions underwater. But at this moment, the Sea Lord was almost in a state of madness, constantly ordering the sea warriors to go through the minefields at the risk of their lives. It seems that they are paving the way for someone. From before to now, the only unit that cannot be detected by the sonar of the Star of Tomorrow is the netherworld deep sea in deep dive state. This angle. Zhuoluo stared at the route where the depth charge signal disappeared and calculated. They are going for us. No, they are going for the ship next to us. Boom. Zhuoluo's words had just finished. A loud bang sounded next to the Star of Tomorrow. The netherworld deep sea suddenly rushed out and crashed directly into the side of the Phoenix. The huge collision angle directly swallowed up almost half of the Phoenix's hull. The corpses of a large number of marine soldiers flew out together with the broken wooden boards, and were mixed with the corpses of the Sea Clan that were blown up on the sea. After doing all this, the netherworld deep dived into deep dive again. Only the Phoenix, which had half disappeared from the center, was left on the sea, but it was still strong and did not sink. General Mike, General Mike. From the surrounding armored ships, nervous calls were heard heading towards the Phoenix. Many people with the rank of general had already walked to the bow of the ship, watching the situation of the Phoenix with extremely nervous expressions. Anyone can die, but General Mike cannot die. This is something everyone knows. Once General Mike, a 5-star general, is killed in battle, it will definitely be the most painful blow to the military's current high war mood. However, at this moment, someone pointed at the Phoenix's mast. Look, it's General Mike. There, Yulawai grabbed the mast with a grappling hook with one hand, and held Mike firmly in his arms with the other hand. Mike still looked shocked at this moment. The appearance of the Nether Sea was so sudden that he almost thought he was going to hell to meet Aunt Susan next door and her late mother. With difficulty, he turned his head to look at Yulawai. With a pale face, Mike slowly uttered a few words from his mouth, good job. At this moment, a creaking sound suddenly came from the half-broken phoenix. The hull is repairing itself quickly. This was only the first major break in the battle. For Phoenix, this is just the beginning. It has not yet fallen. Boom. The Phoenix's hull shook. While the hull was still being repaired, the Netherworld Sea dealt another painful blow to the Phoenix. Then came the second and third time. Until the fourth time. When the Netherworld Deep Sea surfaced again, harpoons flew out one after another, passing through the gaps in the Netherworld Deep Sea and firmly locking the interior of the hull. Immediately afterwards, a huge pulling force came, and before the Netherworld Deep Sea wanted to destroy the Phoenix again, it pulled the Netherworld Deep Sea towards the past heavenly kingdom. Rumble. The impact angle made of steel directly shattered the shell of the kingdom of the past, and almost half of the ship was swallowed into the kingdom of the past. And facing them from behind. But it wasn't the confused eyes of the sailors. Instead, they were organ cannons that had been prepared. Emission. Boom boom boom. In the past, the kingdom of heaven was involved in a close-range offensive and defensive battle. In the distance, Chao Chi naturally saw this scene. Among the three miracle ships, the Meteor and the Netherworld Deep Sea already had their own opponents and were successfully held back. In other words, next he must fight against the Phoenix, the Eternal Shield, and the Star of Tomorrow on his own. The warm-up time is over, and it's time for humans to see what true despair is. A frightening smile suddenly appeared at the corner of Chao Chi's mouth. Stroking the hull of the Stormbringer, then, "Let's set sail, honey." Suddenly, countless thunderclouds covered the sunlight at the junction of the second and fifth channels. The wind on the sea is no longer calm, and the roaring wind seems to be showing the anger of nature. The gradually increasing wind force blew the ships of both sides to the ground, and also increased the amplitude of the waves. Until the first lightning connecting the sky and the earth struck from a high altitude. Waterspouts gradually began to form, roaring towards the sunken ship awakened by Yulawai. This doomsday scene was much stronger than when the Stormbringer was first born. But it's not over yet, Chao Chi said to himself. It was not until he received the trial from the Duke of Ocean that he realized that the cursed warship was not the real legacy left by the Duke of Ocean. His real legacy. It was something that the blood race could not touch at all. That thing seemed to be born for the sea race. "Come out, my friend, the deep sea giant." With Chao Chi's call, a giant octopus spanning thousands of meters emerged from the ocean. The Duke of Ocean once raised a pet during his adventure, and that pet grew up day by day over thousands of years. Until now, thousands of years later, it has become a huge monster that can be called a deep sea giant monster. And this is also the most powerful legacy left by the legendary adventurer Duke of Ocean. How to summon a deep sea giant monster? Chao Chi looked into the distance. Who would have thought that only when the Bloody Dawn was completely sunk could the legendary adventurer's test be obtained in the wreckage of the ship? In the past heaven, Zaka, who was hit by artillery fire and could only shrink and defend, laughed out loud after seeing the scene outside. "Ha ha ha ha, you lost completely. In this era, there is no giant ship that can protect you. Even the huge past heaven is as small as a toy in front of this giant monster, and it seems that it can be sunk into the deep sea at will. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 220. Facing the kraken that had begun to wreak havoc in the shipwreck, Yulawai frowned deeply. I saw that each of the kraken's 8 thick tentacles was wrapped around a shipwreck. As the kraken exerted force violently, The shipwreck was unbearably broken into broken wooden boards under the huge force. In addition to the Kraken, the threat posed by the waterspout and the strong wind was also quite terrifying. In front of the waterspouts that looked like pillars of heaven, even the ships of the company and the Blood Clan could only temporarily avoid the sharp edge. And the shipwreck that served as a meat shield to resist the artillery fire was directly swept into the waterspout and torn into pieces in an instant. Sure enough, this era is still based on adventure. Yulawai glanced at Mike. If it weren't for this General Mike insisting on accumulating firepower, give him enough time to explore, he would never let the military have only one miracle ship. But there is no if. We are ready to retreat. After Yulawai finished speaking, several members of the Special Forces also gathered on the Phoenix from other ships. Now they can only try to force a breakout through the Phoenix's indestructible characteristics. As for those unimportant generals in the military, they can only become victims of delaying time. All sacrifices are worth it. On the other side, Yulawai glanced at the past heavenly kingdom, which was entangled with the netherworld deep sea. After only 2 seconds, he retracted his gaze. Coming to this war game is the misfortune of those civilians. Whether it is to protect their homes, or to be reluctant to give up their ancestral property, or for other strange reasons. When entering this war game, those civilians must have been prepared to lose. At this time, a woman in military uniform walked up to Yulawai with the recording board. After a quick military salute, she said in a very concise tone, "The Special Forces are ready, and the Phoenix can retreat at any time. So, General Mike." Yulawai turned his head and looked to the side. Now on the Phoenix, General Mike's subjects and other lords in the military have almost all been lost due to several collisions in the nether deep sea. So the Phoenix has been taken over by the Special Forces. Facing Yulawai's seemingly inquiring eyes, Mike snorted coldly. "You are humiliating a 5-star admiral. I will not retreat." "General, are you crazy?" The female sergeant of the Special Forces who had just reported the situation looked at Mike in disbelief. She seemed unable to imagine how Mike could still say such a thing when surrounded by tens of thousands of ships and the other side had a 1,000-meter level deep-sea giant monster. However, Yulawai interrupted her. Because he knew that Mike had something else to say next. Sure enough. After angrily denouncing the Special Forces' inappropriate remarks, Mike regained his calm expression. Trying to grope for his pipe, Mike was stunned. Only then did he remember that his pipe had turned to ashes on the deck of the Star of Tomorrow during the first round of attacks. So Mike could only put his hands behind his back. 10,000 enemy warships are fleeing in panic under the wise command of this general. Now this general orders the Phoenix to immediately turn to the second channel and consolidate the victory. Yulawai bowed lightly, "Yes, Admiral Mike." Then he gave a look to the rest of the Special Forces. Several people understood. In the Special Forces, there happened to be someone who had a rare talent for escaping. Sometimes, those who can run are also talented. The next moment, the shaking hull of the Phoenix stabilized instantly, and turned against the wind in the opposite direction of the deep-sea giant monster. They ran away. Huan's hero tapped her lips and looked at the light spot on the sonar that was moving away from her. "Lord, can I give them a gift?" Boom. A violent slap was hit on Huan's hero's forehead by Juluo. "Don't make it difficult for the Lord." Looking at this scene, Gao Qiang always had a familiar feeling, as if he had left someone behind. However, Gao Qiang soon had no time to continue thinking. As Yulawai and others tried to withdraw and stay away from the sea area, the sunken ships controlled by Yulawai gradually began to lose their strength. So that the Kraken broke through the line of sunken ships faster. Accompanied by strong winds and heavy rains, the Kraken directly crashed into the battleship group. The depth charge seemed to have no pain on its rough skin. Not long after, the Kraken appeared in the center of the battleship group. Its target was obviously 3 super dreadnoughts with a size of more than 300 meters. Chao Chi did not expect that the Kraken did not need any guidance and went straight to the main target. But after reacting, he still waved the trident fiercely. Then he laughed wildly, "That's it, kill them." On the other side, just as several super dreadnoughts twisted their gun barrels and prepared to attack, the 8 huge tentacles of the Kraken quickly slapped the sea surface, raising waves and rushing towards the surrounding fleet. The worst news for Gao Qiang was dozens of waterspouts were following the Kraken. Although those waterspouts could not cause damage to the Kraken, it was still possible to overturn the battleship. Yeah, I didn't expect to be forced to this point. Seeing that the tentacles of the giant monster from the deep sea had smashed down on the head of the rising star, Huan's hero still laughed out loud even now. "It's so much fun. It really makes me fall in love with sailing." Boom. Several tentacles hit 3 super dreadnought ships respectively. Except for the cracks in the Kingdom of Heaven, the other 2 super dreadnoughts only had slight dents in their armor. But even so, it is enough to prove the power of the deep sea monster. Even if it was directly hit by artillery, the outer armor of the perpetual shield could not make a single dent. But these days are different. Now facing the rapid attack of the deep sea monster, the deformation of the outer armor is still rapidly increasing. "I'm going to restrain it." Lian Qin's voice suddenly came from the past heaven. In the past, hundreds of harpoons flew out of the launch holes of the heavenly kingdom, piercing straight into the flesh of the deep sea monster. However, facing a giant beast of the size of the deep sea monster, in the past, the tonnage of the kingdom of heaven could not even pull it. On the contrary, as the giant monster of the deep sea shook its body in pain, the kingdom of the past also shook violently, as if it might be overturned by this 1,000-meter-long monster at any time. But on the other hand, there is no obstacle of waves. After successfully aiming, the artillery fire of the Eternal Shield and the Star of Tomorrow hit the deep sea monster's brain one after another. There was a roar of artillery fire, and several holes were blown open in the deep sea monster's brain, and smelly blood was continuously pouring out from it.